What's up YouTube, my name is Wade D of Dreamslab Productions, and as you saw in the opening, we are going to demystify the art of the live sample performance with Maschine. I'm going to try to do my best to keep my explanations within the upper beginner to intermediate level, but I am very active in my comment section, so feel free to ask any questions if I happen to miss an explanation or something of the sort. Now obviously most of what I'm going to explain is going to be machine focused, however a lot of the techniques used here can be used in other sampler/groupbox workflows as well. Now, with that being said, let's get started. All right, let's start with sampling with a sampling video that makes the most sense. Now, there are two modules that Maschine has to help you with your sampling needs: the audio module and the sampler module. We're going to start with the audio module. All right, I'm going to just load a random sample here, or loop rather. So when you go in Maschine, you have one shots, you have loops. Think of loops as someone playing a guitar every 4 bars, it starts over, where a one shot is a drummer hitting a snare once, rings out. That's pretty much the difference. In the brackets, it gives you the tempo. The tempo of this sample is 140. The tempo of my project is 78. Maschine did the math and even half-timed the sample tempo to match more in line with the project. So it does all the math for you with the audio module. It's really dope. Now, the audio module has 2 playback modes. You see that we now have this line here. Cool, it's doing its thing, and then when it gets to the end of the pattern, it's going to start over. And that's how the audio module works when it's in loop playback mode. One cool thing about the audio module is you can tune it from here and it does not affect the timing of the sample. You can press play. Right, and you can do that to your heart's content till you find what inspires you. Really dope. The audio module has another playback mode called gate. Gate can work in 2 different ways. So if I just press play now, as you saw that the loop that was there is now grayed out. If I press play, you hear nothing. You can draw in things and it'll play, then it'll mute when nothing is played there, or you can even arm to record that on your machine if you like. If I'm just going to record, it'll just be off. If that is more your fancy, that's how that works. Now, as you saw when I was doing gating mode, it does not start the loop back from the beginning. The loop still plays. You would just use this to mute and play different parts of the loop in time with how that's working. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, another cool thing with gate mode that is slept on in Maschine is you can actually pull up keyboard mode, and we'll just make these all, I don't know, a bar. And you can actually pitch these on the grid as they play through. So really cool if you have parts of a loop that are in the key of what you're doing, but one part that is pitched somewhere different, or they're playing a different chord that doesn't match up with your chord progression. This is a way to fix that. So if we listen to that. All different ways to get flavors and varieties out of your loop in the audio module. So I'm going to put this back in loop mode and just clear this out. Now, sometimes you'll come across a situation where you see you have something here, you have an audio module, it's in loop mode, but there's nothing on the bar. If you just double click, it'll bring that back. That's how that works. Very common if you're playing through some of Machine's expansions and they have pre-made loops, you might run into that problem. All right, one thing I do want to mention is what's in the sampling window for the audio module. So on Maschine, if we press sampling, we can get there this way. It comes up with record first. If you were recording your own loops, that's obviously what this would be used for. And then you have your edit window, which has like your truncate, your normalize, reverse, fades, silence cut, copy, paste, duplicate, things like that. And you can move the starting point and your end point and to manipulate it. As we'll go in later with the sampler module, some things are missing, mostly because you can tune your audio loop straight from the knob here next to your playback option. So that pretty much covers the audio module. Now, as you saw, that wasn't in a demo video. I was using what we're going to talk about next, which is this sampler module. But I did just want to make sure that you understood the two options that were available to you with Maschine. Okay, now for what I used in this project, I did get my particular sample from Splice. It's not an ad or whatever. There's tons of places you can get loops and things. I just wanted to let you know that, which is why it has all this writing on here in case you were wondering. And along with the Splice bridge, which you can ignore for now. All right, so now we have the sampler module. As you can see, there are now different tabs with different things going on. I'm not going to go into all of it, but I will go into the most relevant things with it. All right, we're going to start in this case with the edit window because it does look very different. So once again, in Maschine, you can press sampling, or on the software, you can come down to this little waveform and select it here. Now, if I press the pad, it clearly plays a sample, but nothing is in the record area. And that's because we didn't record this ourselves. That is just another difference between the audio module and the sampler module. So we'll start with edit. Now, it has all the things that the audio module had with the addition of stretch. You would use this if you wanted to pitch the sample that you're using. I always tell people you want to pitch first before you're chopping. It alleviates a lot of headaches if you were to do it in the reverse. All right, so if we go into the Maschine window here, a couple things I want to acknowledge in this stretch module. You have two stretch modes. You have beat and you have free. Pretty self-explanatory, but I'll go into it. So if you were to tune this here while it is in beat mode, the BPM would not change, the timing would not change, only the pitch would change. Where if you would put it in free, the timing would change. Most of the times you want to be in beat mode. Now, sometimes when free mode is better is if you have something that didn't detect the tempo right and it's just a little bit off, you can experiment that way. Both modes have a little bit of artifacts and some are pleasing to different people. So, experiment with both and see what works for you. Okay. Now, outside of that here, and I'm sorry, of course you can find all that on the screen too with beat, free, and you can adjust here, and then you would hit apply. The next part of the edit window would be, of course, slice mode. There are different types of slice modes. This time I will do it on the screen. So you have manual. With manual, you press the first pad. Next time you press the next pad, it'll add your slices in those spots. Okay? You can then remove and erase the slices that you made if you didn't like them. And that is how manual mode works. All right, next we have grid mode, which slice on a denomination of a note, fourth, quarter, eighth, 16th, 32nd, etc. You can then tell it to make it a mono slice so they don't run into each other. And you can, of course, make a new pattern or replace a pattern you already made. If we go to split, it automatically splits it into a number. So right now you see a split in a 4, split in a 16, 32nd notes, etc. Okay, and then lastly we have detect. Detect works by picking up the sensitivity of the waveforms and applying a slice for you. What is cool is that with the detect mode, it zeroes your cut points. Now, for those in the know, zeroing your cut points allows you to have clean chops without no clicker pops in there. Now, as you saw, it might not have been in the other ones, but on Maschine, if you take knob 5 and you zoom in, you can add or move the slice, as I'm moving here, to its own point. And let's see if we can give an example if it's not zeroed. Because it's such a small chop, it's not noticeable. But if it's not on a 0 point, like there, which is where the wave lines and the center line meet, it'll cause pops and clicks in your sample when you're playing it. Okay, so those are the main slice points. If we just back out of that and move this back here, I'm going to just say we're going to just split it. I'm going to split it into 16ths. Okay, and like I said, we can apply that mono, which is usually what most people want, or if you want a new pattern, you can do that as such. For the sample in the song, I just split everything on the grid, made it simple, and I adjusted the 0 points as such. Now, there's a couple things you can do after you have made your slices and you hit apply. You hit apply, things will start blinking. You have a couple options. You can rather apply it to a pad. All right, it's on the machine. I'm going to hit OK. It's now on a pad. Where people seem to get confused is when you hit the pad, you're like, where's the rest of my samples? You would have to go in the keyboard mode, make sure it's in chromatic, and we're going to go all the way down to, sorry, C -2. Okay, so as long as it's on C-2, that's how your samples are laid out. Now, one thing to mention, as you heard, they're running into each other, which isn't always what you want. The best way to fix that is with this here, we're going to go into plugin and we're going to lower the polyphony to 1. That means only one sound can play at a time and they won't run into each other, which is usually preferred when you're doing your sampling. Okay, so let's say we undo that, all right? And we undo that sample that I made there. Another option you have when you hit apply, you can apply it to a different group. And then when you apply it to a different group, it's now on the pads without going into keyboard mode. So you have a couple options there. So same thing here though, they're running into each other. Now, when you do it this way, what you want to do is you want pad mode. Well, first you want to select all, go into pad mode, and you want to add it to a choke group. That means when you play one, they choke the sound of the other, okay? And that was me just turning off that select all. So as you see, if I play it, it all says it's in choke group 1. Okay, same thing. Now, if you don't have the Maschine Mach 3, you can do the same thing by selecting all of these here. We'll get rid of this. Maybe I can shift click, hit this here, and then apply to choke group. Okay, so two options to go about the same thing so that your samples don't run into each other if that's what you want. I did do that and I put it on this blue group here. Same thing, so I'm just going to delete that purple group because it's no longer needed. Now that I am in my blue group and I have my polyphony set to 1, you have a couple more options even going forward. Once you have this set up here, if you go to pitch envelope, there are 3 different types. Now, I went over earlier what a one-shot is. A one-shot is you press it, stops. One shot, boom, stops. That's how it works. You have a couple other options. You have attack, hit, decay, or attack, hold, decay, my apologies. And that is pretty much also used in a similar drum fashion where like you hit it and as you saw it cut a little short, you can adjust the hold and decay parameters to make it more, have the envelope open longer, make the sound play longer and fade in different ways. That is attack, hold, decay. The other one is ADSR, mostly used for synth sounds, piano sounds, things like that, but could still work with samples. And pretty much that means if you press it, this is a bad example, and you hold the pad down, it plays out, and when you let go, it'll ring out. So in ADSR goes attack, how long before the attack kicks in or the sample sounds. Decay, how long after you hit the attack does the sound play. Sustain, when you're holding the pad down, how long your sustain lasts. And release is after you let the pad go, how much is left over that it plays in sound. So there's 3 different modes. That is a very, very quick overview I'm going to just keep it in one-shot mode for now. Go on to the next step. All right, so I did want to make sure I gave the proper due diligence to how to go into sampling and the options that you have. The rest of this stuff is a lot of basic machine knowledge, but I will still go over the next steps to show how I got to where I got from. I'm not going to go super heavy into drums. I already done that in a previous video that I will link in the card up there, so feel free to check that out. I went with the Fairfax kit. I think at best I did some pad linking. Pad linking, for people that don't know, is just when you press one pad, it hits the other pad to layer your snares, things like that. Two ways to do that, of course. You can do it in Maschine from pad mode and go to link group. Or, of course, you can do it in the software by clicking this here, hitting the pad you want, and changing the link group here. You can send and receive. That just means that when you press one, the other one receives, or when you press the other one receives. I left them both on send. That way, if I hit pad 10, pad 2 triggers, pad 2, pad 10 triggers. It just works out better for me in that case, but that's what that means, and that's really the only tip I have for this, because everything else I did was pretty basic. All right, so I picked some drum sounds I like. Cool. All right, so now I'm going to start messing around recording patterns and scenes. Now, what I like to do, and those unfamiliar with Maschine, this view that I have here is called Ideas View. All right. From left to right is your groups, and from up to down are your patterns, and then at the very top are your scenes. Without going super in depth, scenes hold the patterns. Patterns are what the groups play in a given bar structure, 4-bar, 8-bar, etc. And a group is, of course, just something to hold your sounds or samples on the pads. Hopefully that made sense. Like I said, feel free to leave comments below if you do need a better explanation. I can do bare bones basic if, that's what the audience wants. All right, so I have a pattern for my drums here that I was messing around with just so I can start thinking of sampling ideas. All right, pretty straightforward. Now I can get into my sampling and then see what I like, what I don't like, etc. So as you can see on my screen, I have this separated differently. So what I normally do is I make a group that holds my sample chops. Well, it'd help if it wasn't muted. Let's just unmute everything so it's still the same thing, with the choke groups and stuff. And this is where I start coming up with ideas. So in this particular instance, I have 3 ideas, and what's cool with this particular sample is you have that upstroke guitar. And that can end a phrase. So you can do anything like a and that upstroke really helps set the time, which is one of the things I really liked about the sample to begin with. So I have recorded a pattern or a couple. So, just for giggles, we will just have group 1, which is my drums. Make this sample, or make this more simple. We'll just label that drums. We'll say recorded samples for this group to help make that make more sense if you're just walking into this session. All right, and we're just going to start a new pattern. Make that pattern 4 bars. Play the drums. And I will spend a lot of time in this particular space to see what I like, what I don't like. Okay, let's see. And honestly, I could be there all day. So I use this group to find out what ideas I want to stick. And then once I find them, you know, I record that pattern, okay? And in this instance, I had 3 patterns, if I just delete that for the example, that I liked. So let's see here, as far as the drums, my drum pattern, there's only 1. So I've just kept the same drums the whole time. So as we play through, now this is literally just playing the whole sample one at a time. Exposing the sample, demoing the sample is usually the terms a lot of people say. Just says where you came from as you're about to show where you're going to go. All right. My pattern 2 is what I considered my verse pattern. And then I have what I call my chorus pattern, which is a little more intricate. But also the way that this falls is, it can be interpreted, it can be manipulated. It isn't super structured. So then what I do here is I'll play the drums and we'll go through some of these scenes here. So once again, exposing the sample is my first scene. This is my second scene, which is my verse. The drums with this sample pattern. So once I start having ideas that stick, I want to add some ear candy, some other elements to kind of make it vibe. So that is what this group is for. So I have a couple other splice loops. I was messing around with a piano for a bit, trying to find things that stick. All right, what I did is I came across this particular loop. And I realized that that works really well with my drums. It helps keep time, it helps give it some motion, all of those things. All right, and then I did that for my chorus pattern and my after chorus as well. I found some horn samples. Some of these get pretty intricate. I found some cool chop samples, and as you see, I have these all set to audio modules as we went over earlier. That way I don't have to sit here and try to play that while playing the other sample while playing this. Now you can blend samples and copy those to another group so you can trigger both separately, but in this case I just like to jump around the audio samples. All right, so I have the DJ scratch, the horns, and the thing you just heard prior. Nice strings in there. And then finally, it really just comes down to arrangement. Maschine has 2 ways to really go about this process. You have ideas view, which is what's on the screen now, and then you have song view. All right, if you want to switch between them and you don't have a Mach 3, you would just hit this little button here. All right, song view, you lay out all your scenes like it's a song. Intro, verse, chorus, blah, blah, blah. You press start and it just plays through it as you have it arranged. I'm getting weird with this whole backwards thing. Plays through it as you have it arranged. In ideas view, it's a little more intricate. So they have this thing called performance grid, which I think is a horrible title for this. But in this little section here, you can say when you want to trigger your next scene. I have it set for the scene, so that means it'll play through the whole scene, which is whatever the longest pattern is. So this is an 8-bar pattern if you count these little blocks here. And then it'll go into the next one. What's cool about this is I can load up my chops. And let's unmute some stuff. I can load up my chops. And then I can trigger the next scene I want to go to. But since this is 8 bars, it's going to stay in this scene until those 8 bars hit. All right, so then we're going to my verse program, which is scene 1. And that is pretty much how I laid out that video. You can do it in song mode. You can get real intricate and very quickly trigger your scenes, but it's really all about how well you can play and trigger your scenes. But Maschine sets it up in a way where you have all that available to you on the white buttons above as you play on the pads below. Now, as you see, I'm playing on the blue pads, which I do have marked for live. So my recorded samples that I have in green were me committing the ideas and figuring out how to make my scenes or parts or whatever. Matter of fact, let's just name these. I don't know why I did that to begin with. I guess because it's easier to say scenes and explain what that is versus trying to explain these things I already named something else. And we'll say after chorus. Okay. And we'll call this the intro. So as I'm going through this and I'm doing my thing, I'm getting an idea for how all these things are laying out and what I'm liking and what part, and I can arrange this as such. And then if I'm staying in song mode, I don't need a 4Live group. You know, I made this song, I'll lay it out in song mode. It can go to the artist. Everything's cool. But since I wanted to play this live, I remember what I played in my green group, which is, you know, the recorded samples, and then I just mute that green group and then I just play it all live as I'm triggering the samples. All right, and that is pretty much how I chose to do this particular process. This was a little bit of a long one. There was a lot of rambling somewhere in the middle there, but hopefully there was a lot that you could take away to inspire you for your own creations. I love coming across live performances and things on stage or on YouTube, because I do feel like live playing your samples and things like that is an art, and not everyone chooses to invest in that particular pathway of the art. Not that there's nothing wrong with just producing and releasing. You know, you don't always have to play live.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
All right, so if you found value in that, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I release a lot of content like this around sampling, arranging, beat production, mixing, etc. Mixing, a whole other thing that I didn't even want to get into on this particular video. But all that aside, once again, my name is Wade, Demystified Productions, and you have a good one. Keep creating.